Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish NFL podcast once again. And in the house tonight, we have Colm, we have Brian, we have Christina, and we have Mark. Hello, everybody. So before we get started, let me just do a quick shout out to our sponsors, Cassidy Travel. You can go to playoff games, you can go to the Super Bowl, you can go next season, you can do all those things, and Cassidy Travel will hook you up. So check out their info in our bios and all the other good places that you can come and find them online. So before we talk about wildcard matches, we have a little wildcard of our own at the start. We have some cool announcements. So rather than me announce them, I will turn over to Mark, who will also turn over to Christina with some cool announcements. So Mark, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Calais. Look, it's the playoffs, so the Irish NFL show has to do a bit of touring, like any good band, get on the road again. So we might have some things lined up with our friends and partners at Cassidy Travel during the divisional round that will come to another stage. But in fact, we've already made plans that during the championship round, we will be doing our normal show, actually live from one of our great partners and sponsors during the year at PointsBet from their offices in Dublin 8. We'll have a few special guests and we'll have a bit of a crack with all the PointsBet crew there that week and that night. But in fact, also later that week for the championship games, Christina will be live and on Raw as well in another location.
So we're very excited to announce that we're partnering with Captain America's, and we will be doing a live show from Captain America's on Grafton Street on the 27th of January at 7:30. The price will be €10 per ticket, and the tickets go live tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We do expect this to go very, very quickly. So our advice to you is get on board once we share the ticket information with you tomorrow morning. And we can't wait to see you guys in person. It's going to be great to see everyone torment you all and me stand there on the sidelines laughing at everybody.
Yeah, Raiders fans are banned. Raiders fans are banned. Not allowed to talk about that game at Allegiant Stadium. But other than that, everyone welcome. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Raiders fans.
Sorry, Gala. I'm already looking forward to seeing what short Colm will wear to Captain America's. I'm sure he's already thinking in his head what he will line up for that special evening. Colm never.
He's waiting for the Bengals top, Brian. He's waiting for that tracksuit.
Never fails to disappoint.
The cool Bengal top. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. Looks good. Well, if you can get that in time, Colm, good luck to you. Alas, I won't be there for the Captain America's one. I will be in Paris, of all places. So feel sorry for me if you would like. Okay, brilliant. Well, lots to look forward to there and live with the gang. But tonight, we're going to talk about these wildcard weekend games coming up. 6 games, I think, is if I'm not right, 3 AFC and 3 NFC. Yep, mathematics. Very good. Well done, Cala. Okay, so let's start with the Saturday night game, the 9:30 game, which is the NFC West clash. So here we have 2 teams who've actually already played each other twice already, I think, if I'm not wrong. If my research here in front of me, thanks, Brian, is correct. So it's the Seahawks at the 49ers in Santa Clara. So maybe I'll turn it over to each of you for your predictions, and I will start perhaps with you, Brian, as a thank you for preparing this little piece of information for me.
Yeah, like over the past few days, the NFL kind of fans have kind of spoke about this seeding team, because Colm touched on it last week when the NFL didn't know how they were going to play out the season about potentially introducing an 8th seed, and then this kind of brought this conversation back up around the fact that the 7th seed was introduced. This is the second year, I believe, where we've had a 7th seed, and this year the 2 second seeds versus 7th seeds look like quite one-sided clashes. These two have played each other, obviously, because they're within the same division twice this year. Week 2, 27-7 to the 49ers, a very dominant game. And then they played each other again in week 15, I believe, on the Thursday Night Football. Brock Purdy's first game on the road, week 14. Brock Purdy's first game on the road as a 49ers quarterback, and some of us felt that could be a tricky affair for them. 21-13, didn't really tell the full tale of the game, the story. There was a late touchdown in garbage time, as they say, for the Seattle team. Very dominant performance that night from the 49ers. McCaffrey went for 108 yards, 1 touchdown, 30 yards receiving. Kittle was on fire. Kittle, at the start of the season, became more of a blocking tight end. We've seen the George Kittle of old in the second half of the season. 2 touchdowns last week, 2 touchdowns in that game. And right now, this 49ers team arguably are the favourites to win the Super Bowl. I know everybody feels the Eagles are either the clear favourites, in terms of the NFC and who goes to the Super Bowl. But it's hard to get away from this Niners team. Seattle got into the playoffs last weekend on the back of the Packers losing that game. And I think this is one of the most one-sided games we may see this weekend. I fully believe that the Niners will win this comfortably. I think Seattle are kind of a team that have overstretched themselves this year in terms of making the playoffs. And look, they'll do their utmost under Pete Carroll. They'll always be competitive. But I think right now this Niners team are like a steam train. I just can't see how they'll get stopped on Saturday evening. I think it's a Niners win all day long.
Niners win all day long, says Brian. What about you, Christina? What's your take?
I definitely think it's going to be a Niners win. Pete Carroll came out this week and actually said that they've got a really tall order against the 49ers, who are completely fully loaded. I think it's going to be interesting is we've seen rookie quarterbacks go towards the playoffs, and they've always struggled in the playoffs when it comes to wildcard games. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brock Purdy. I have a feeling that Shanahan is going to play a passing game, a very quick run game, which means Brock Purdy will have very little to do on the actual day itself. But it's definitely really hard to see past a 49ers win.
Okay, very good. Mark, how about you? Same?
Seahawks fans are lamenting the fact that Brian has forsaken them. The only man to say they're going to get 9 wins, the only
That's
man
right.
to say they're going to make the playoffs, and now cast them into the bin. Their season's with O'Leary in the grave, according to him, the man himself. The 49ers are definitely the favourites here. And yes, going by their other 2 matchups, I think actually I was wrong, Brian. I think it was week 15 in fairness. But the week 15 matchup, you could say a 21-13, that's only a 1-score game. But let's remember the Seahawks were at home. They backdoored a cover, basically. They got a touchdown with about 3 minutes to go through Noah Fant. So it wasn't maybe as close as the score seems. But it's still the playoffs. It's still more pressure than Brock Purdy has ever seen before. It's still the scenario, Colin, I know you've talked about this before, sometimes Kyle Shanahan can outthink himself and, maybe could have sealed a couple of Super Bowls by playing a bit different and trying not to be so smart on various occasions. So is there the potential that anything could go wrong? Of course they could. You're going up against Pete Carroll, who's a wily old cat. Geno Smith has performed some unexpected performances in the last while. So I don't think it's straightforward. Nothing in the playoffs really is straightforward, and especially not this season, which has been full of shocks. With all of those caveats being said, the San Francisco 49ers do still have the soon-to-be, in my mind, Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa. They do have what has been the most impressive defense. They do have a 10-game winning streak. And they do have so many options on offense. Even a rookie quarterback in his first playoff game, I do not think will hold them back. But just watch out for the Seahawks trying to take away the running backs, trying to take away the tight ends, where Purdy is focused all his throws on. And if they can in any way bottle up that San Francisco running game, it could be a very, very different state of affairs. That all being said, I'm with the 49ers.
You're going 49ers as well. And last but not least, Colin, you're on the same boat, perhaps, or no?
I would lean very much into what Mark has been saying. I'm surprised Brian has gone away from them, because I think this is exactly the type of game that Pete Carroll loves. Nobody's given them a prayer. And if there's one thing Pete Carroll loves, is absolutely being the underdog and upsetting the apple cart. And he is going to be scheming, which he is very, very good at. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is certainly definitely a lot closer than people are expecting. But, I think they're going to put Brock Purdy under all sorts of pressure. And yeah, Brock Purdy has performed far above expectations, and he does have Kyle Shanahan. But playoff football is different. This is win or go home. That changes absolutely everything. You can get away with things in the regular season. The pressure is not what it is in the playoffs, especially given where the 49ers were. When Purdy came in, everything was rolling already. So the 49ers should win this. They absolutely should. But But I would not be shocked if the Seattle Seahawks were to win it. But I am going to say that the 49ers and that defense does enough. But I think this will be a lot closer than maybe people expect.
Okay. And Pete Carroll, just to be clear, is the coach of the Seahawks. Is that right, Colin? Because I thought for a moment you meant the original drummer in Oasis, but clearly not. No? Okay, good. Brian, did you have something you want to throw in there?
Yeah, Mark mentions backdoor covers in the NFL, referring to betting on the handicap and stuff. Colin and Mark have essentially given themselves a backdoor cover there, where come Monday evening, the Seattle Seahawks managed to win this. So I did pick the 49ers, but I wasn't surprised. I did refer to the reasons why I could see them winning the game. They've essentially given the reasons as to how Seattle will win or could win, and then they say, but I'm still not picking them.
Yeah, we've learned from you, Brian. We learned from you. Don't worry.
All right, enough of the bickering. 49ers are obviously going to win, unfortunately, because Christian McCaffrey decided to leave the Panthers. That's the reason. All right, thank you for your points, nevertheless. Full house on that one then. All right, game 2. So this is the sort of the Saturday night going into the morning one, the 1:15 a.m. one. So it's the Chargers on the road to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this is the battle of the haircuts, I think. So I know Trevor Lawrence has luxuriant hair, which we've talked about a lot here. But also, I took a look at this Justin Herbert guy. Fine head of hair on him as well. Now, I don't know if that wins you football games, but if it does, Lawrence might have the edge there. But tell us your thoughts on it, Mark, and who you might see winning this one.
Well, first of all, it's very exciting and important that both quarterbacks are healthy, Calais. That hasn't always been the case with these two.
As well as a healthy head of hair. Is that what you're saying?
Healthy head of hair I was coming back to as well.
Good stuff.
I think, was it Brian referred, maybe you did, Calais, to the Timotei ads in relation to Trevor Lawrence before. I prefer L'Oreal. It's because they're worth it. They're worth every penny. They're worth every part of their salaries and their extensions that they're due to get. I mean, David Ginola is coming back to mind in this regard, or Cheryl Cole,
yes.
your preference. And they could definitely get their advertising spends with the shampoo brands in the US. But of course, they're getting all their kudos and their spending power from their salaries from being two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. And this is what we wanted to see. This is what I think the dream was a couple of years ago when we're saying, look at the AFC, look how stacked it is with exciting young quarterbacks. Look at, depending on your point of view on Tua, Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, Lawrence. It started to become a little bit of a laundry list. And we want to see these guys match up against each other in the playoffs and see how it all transpires. The reality, though, is, I think, a bit different. It's not all just on the quarterbacks. And whilst the Chargers have been starting to piece it together on offense a little bit more, they started to get more of a run game in the second half of the season. Austin Eckler has been a key part of that issue for them. Most importantly, they started to get people healthy on defense. And they're potentially the team that is getting, I'll say it straight, they're my dark horse in the AFC. They're the team that's getting healthy at the right time. And it's all about both sides of the ball. The Jags are the sexy pick at the moment. Look at them. Look how great Doug Peterson's turned it around. Go through the quarterbacks they've faced off against in the last 6 weeks of the season. There is no doubt they're performing. There is no doubt that Trevor Lawrence has raised his game. But in terms of what they've gone up against, they haven't seen Justin Herbert. They have not seen Justin Herbert and the Chargers in this 6 to 8 games they've really turned their season around in. They've seen second stringers and third stringers. I could give you the whole list, Calais, but I mean, basically, you will ask me who is most of the people that they have matched off against at quarterback this year. I have infinite respect for the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, which I actually think is one of the most underrated defenses in the league. But I'll be honest, Justin Herbert and the Chargers, as long as we don't dealing with the Chargers threatening to deceive and, this plumbassing that goes on in relation to every year, as long as they turn up, they should, in my opinion, be more than enough for the Jacksonville Jaguars in this game.
So you're picking the Chargers, yeah? Wow. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, even an emphatic, demonic demonstration of preference. How about you then, Brian? What's your take on this matchup?
Mark is he's kind of distancing himself from this good Jags run in which they've been on, and referring to the opposition and the poor quarterbacks. But then I'll throw one out there for you. The Chargers have only beaten one team this season that have made the playoffs. So, we could obviously look at it from that point of view as well. Have they played anybody really good? And when they do play teams really good, they don't beat them. The only team which they beat and who've come to the playoffs is the Dolphins. And even with that, you could question whether they're really good enough at this stage of the season to be a playoff team. I have been impressed with the Jags despite the opposition and who they play. And there's a lot to be said for having momentum going into the playoffs as much as getting players back and having a fit and healthy team. Defensively, Marcus right, the Jags have really stepped up in the last 5 games. 4 to 5, they've only conceded 23 points or less. They've been quite dominant. They did play each other in the season, which the Jags won. Let's not forget that game. That game, in fairness, had a lot of injuries. Mike Williams, I know Colin has his question marks whether he's the number 1 wide receiver in this league, but he is really crucial to this team. When he plays, Herbert's percentage rate in terms of completions goes up to 69%. When he doesn't, it drops down to 38%. And right now, we don't know if he's going to play. It's just been confirmed in the last hour. He hasn't practiced today again, and it's going to be a game time decision. I'd imagine that he'll go out there last game this evening kind of scenario, and they'll have to play him. And Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence isn't going up against these poor quarterbacks. It's the defense, and he's thrown 15 touchdowns and 1 interception in his last 9 games. The reason why they're on this run is because he has shown and become the quarterback that we expected to see under good head coaching, because you could write off last year because of the craziness that was going on there. I'm with the Jags. Again, I'm against Mark on this. I think the Jags will win. I think we'll see. People were referring to the campaign on the Chargers' social page today about these punching of the tickets all season long, and no one gave them a chance. I think their final ticket will be punched on Saturday night. I'm going with the Jags.
Okay, going with the Jags. I'm going to go to you then, Christina, next. And here, are you Jags or Chargers? What's your thoughts?
You know what? I've been kind of tossing all week. I've been a flip-flop on this one, especially because the Chargers team that we're seeing this weekend is completely different to the team in week 3 that Doug Peterson's team completely obliterated 38-10. That was a shocking game. They were missing Allen. They were missing Herbert that day. The team just didn't look gelled. It was only 3 weeks into the season. The Jags offense needs to have a better game, though, than what it did against the Titans last week. We all know that. We've all agreed completely with that. I do think, though, after rewatching the Chargers do have a chance, and I think it's going to be a really close game. But doing what Chargers do always, I've got a feeling they're going to actually mess it up last minute in that last 5 minutes of the game, either through a fumble, an interception, or it's actually going to be through a missed field goal for sure. I'm going to go with the Jags.
Okay, should we put a bet on for a missed field goal? Sounds like a good bet there. Okay, and lastly then, Colin, what is your take on it?
Mark says that the Chargers are getting healthy and getting players back at the right time, and they are getting players back, but they got them back and they couldn't beat the Broncos last week. The Broncos had an absolute train wreck of a season. Mark, they put the starters out. He wanted momentum. I defended him putting the starters out. To me, it made sense because they wanted momentum, but they couldn't beat a bad Broncos team who had absolutely nothing to play for. And he went with his full team. He put the starters out there. The Broncos gave up the most pressure, the most sacks. Russell Wilson has been appalling, and he made the chart. Talk about rolling back the years. Russ was having the moon ball. The Chargers couldn't run the ball. I just don't have any faith. I saw this Chargers team do the exact same thing last year against a really bad Broncos team. We have seen it time and again from the Chargers over the years. When it comes to crunch time, they ultimately are the Spurs of the NFL. I don't trust them. They're too Spursy. They play some nice football when there's no pressure on them whatsoever. They are blessed that they have Justin Herbert, who is an absolutely phenomenal QB. But I don't have a belief in the rest of them to step up when necessary. I don't think they put the weapons around Herbert outside of Keenan Allen. And I think that in terms of the head coaches, which is possibly even more important than QBs, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the advantage. I would take Doug Peterson over Brandon Staley. And for that reason, I'm going to say that the Jags get the win.
Okay, I see a couple of you itching there to throw in something back. Is it the Spurs reference or what's going on? Brian, did you have something there?
It wasn't, but it is now. I hope we can mock that piece up and put that out before Saturday evening's game. It's too Spursy for me. No, Marcus and Collins alluded to the fact that they're getting healthy, but like we can have this conversation time and time again whether you should play your starters or rest them in the final game of the season when there's nothing to play for. But ultimately, last weekend has cost them because if Mike Williams plays hard, he's not going to be at the 100% that we would expect. And Bosa as well got injured last weekend. And again, will he be fully fit going into this game? They took a gamble with looking for momentum. It didn't work for them both in terms of the result, and it hasn't worked out with injuries. But there is other players coming back, so maybe it's not all. We're not totally reliant on those two players, but it doesn't help the situation.
Fair enough. Mark, I saw you there wanting to come in. What's your thought?
I cannot consider the Chargers being Spursy because if I'm supporting them as an Arsenal fan, that is just
that's death to an Arsenal fan.
I can't agree with Colum's analysis because it just does not compute for me in relation.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'll stand alone on this one, Calais. I'll stand alone.
Stand alone, that's fine. Well, for what it's worth, given that I was a mid-season replacement here in the show, I have never heard any of you talk in any kind of terms about the Chargers. So it's funny that they're now in sort of the playoff picture here, and I for that reason alone, I assume that the Jags are better. But what do I know? Okay,
Calais, sorry, it's a shame you weren't here earlier in the season because I continuously gave out about them week after week.
Oh, did you? Okay.
and that head coach. He's no friend of mine.
He's no friend of yours. Okay, fair enough. Well, he might be quite Spursy as well. All right, I think we might just break a little bit for any comments. I know there's probably comments coming in there. Brian, if you want to flash them up on screen and keep them coming in, folks. Who's the most Spursy team? Maybe is a good question to answer. Okay,
Keith is shown in his picks for the weekend. Niners, Chargers. Ed says Bills. Obviously, he's a Dolphins fan. He's gone Bengals. He's gone for 2 shocks at the end, but I don't know if they're considered shocks at this stage of the season. Cowboys to beat the Bucks and the Giants to beat the Vikings. Owen is keep sleeping on us. Owen is a Chargers fan, so yeah, he's quite confident going into this game, which is. I thought this game would have split us, but it didn't.
Owen, I'm not sleeping on you. I'm wide awake and watching, man. I'm wide awake.
Wide awake. Okay. Any more, Brian, or will we keep going?
No, we'll keep going. That's it for the time.
We'll keep going. We'll keep the comments coming in. They're always a bit of crack and nice to hear from you all. All right, so we're going to go to the Sunday 6:00 game, which is the AFC East clash. Another game with two teams from the same division. So it's the Dolphins at the Bills, and I suppose as someone who's kind of a neutral, certainly since the Panthers are out, I mean, I think the Bills are a team that everyone would like to see do well, the same way people wanted Denmark to do well in the World Cup. But I'll hear your expert opinions on this rather than me waffling. So maybe I'll go to you, Christina, first, and talk me through your thoughts on the Dolphins at the Bills.
I knew you were going to pick me first because this is the one game I don't have a lot of stats or anything written down for, because to be honest with you, we all know it. It's going to be the Bills. I don't think the Dolphins are going to do anything. Tua has been ruled out completely again for the rest of the game. Skylar Thompson is in there for Miami. I don't think he's going to be able to knock the Bills' playoff chances or their advances anyways far away. Josh Allen and his co have actually won 7 straight games to get to the AFC East. So I can't see past the Bills this week.
There's no other way of looking at it, really, is there? Okay, fair enough. All right, then. How about you, Brian? What's your take on Dolphins and the Bills?
I can give you a path to victory for the Dolphins. Yeah. They only played each other a couple of weeks back, the week prior to Christmas, and the game finished on a field goal win for the Bills, and a lot of Dolphins fans felt it was one that got away, but I do recognise it was with Tua at quarterback as opposed to their third stringer in Skylar Thompson, who has done very little in the games in which we've seen him so far. They did run the ball very effectively in that game, 156 yards. And they got away from that since then. They just, for some reason, the following week they played the Packers on Christmas Day in the first half, dominant run game, and for some reason their coaches since then has done nothing. If they go back to basics on that and have long methodical drives and keep the Bills off the field, there's a chance. I was looking at a piece around the Chiefs when their offense was a bit static a couple of years ago. They put Tyreek Hill back into the special teams, and essentially he was the punt returner and the kickoff returner, and their average return went from 22 yards up to 48 yards because he's so effective. He's arguably one of the best wide receivers in the league. He's so special, even on special teams. maybe they put him back. It is the last game of the season, essentially. If they lose, go with a flyer there, put themselves in a position where they get good field position, allow themselves short field for the quarterback, and maybe he can then put them in position to score touchdowns. I'm trying to put up reasons as to why I see a Dolphins win, but generally, I'm with Christine, and I imagine I'm going to be with the guys. It's going to be Bills. They're averaging 30 points a game at home. Can you see the Dolphins, even if they do go a particular way, keep them up with that? I can't see it. It's Bills for me as well.
Okay, so there's maybe a sliver of chance. You're reminding me of that scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's like, what are the chances of a guy like me and a girl like you getting together? And she's like, 1 in a million. He's like, so you're saying there's a chance? So it's that kind of level of chance, I suppose, is what we're talking about. Mark, what's your take?
I'd like to go back to the history books, Calais. If I remember,
Please do.
If I remember correctly, and Dolphins fans, you can correct me, the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game, I'm pretty sure it was the last time they won a playoff game, was under Dan Marino, actually. He went on the road to Seattle, if I remember correctly, in the wild card round, won a playoff game up there, and then he went into the divisional round against the team we were just talking about, the Jacksonville Jaguars, in an all-Florida State rivalry. In the final game of a Hall of Fame career, 17-year career, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play the game, Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins were trounced 62-7 in the most one-sided playoff game ever known. They were 38-0 up before Marino had completed his first pass in relation to it. 2 interceptions, two fumbles. It was an abomination. I am not raising this game to hurt Keith's feelings and all the Dolphins fans out there and to bring back bad memories. But the Dolphins, we're talking about the Chargers threatening to deceive. The Dolphins since then, they've done nothing. You'll do nothing. I mean, that's the Conor McGregor line, isn't it? You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. They haven't, and they won't with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. He's on about a 57% completion rate. He has done nothing. They've scraped into the playoffs on the back of a 5-game losing streak and then scraping. I mean, watch that game from last week again. They're the very definition of scraping into the playoffs against the Jets team that didn't even have an offense. Okay? This team, even with Tyreek Hill, even with Waddle, even with Jeff Wilson at running back, all these weapons, they can't do anything if Skylar Thompson can't get the ball to them. I don't blame him. He's a 7th-round quarterback pick. You don't expect much from them unless they're called Brock Purdy, clearly. So it's not his fault. But there is, I'm just going to say it, play this clip back to me next week if you like. There is no way they're even going to be competitive in this game. This is going to be 42-3 or something similar. The Bills will obliterate them.
The Bills will obliterate them. I think we stood corrected there, Brian, about put in a message there saying they did have a wildcard win back in the year 2000. Is that right, Brian?
Okay, sorry, the year after that, fair enough, Brian. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
It wasn't me. It was Keith. Keith came in and corrected it.
Keeping us honest there.
Thanks, 22 years. Keith. Okay, the year after Marino retired.
Right, fair enough. Well, listen, Colm, I'd like to get your take on the game as well, given the way everyone's gone in this. I'm guessing you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this, Calla, is, if the Dolphins were to do it, you would probably be looking at, I don't know if there is a historical precedent for this. I mean, there have been some incredible, upsets, right? You think about maybe Tim Tebow against Ben Roethlisberger. You think of, and Mark won't like this, Nick Foles over Tom Brady and what Nick Foles has done ever since then. You think of Keenum beating Breeze. But those were, they weren't the third string. They were not where the Dolphins find themselves. I did find reference today to the 1965 Colts. Without both of their QBs, went with a tailback at QB. They ended up losing in the playoffs 13-10. But even that was as close as I could find. I was looking for something to give the Dolphins a little bit of hope. I didn't find any, and I don't think there is any.
Don't think there is any. Poor old Dolphins. I do think of my old roommate in the States who was from Utah, and he decided just randomly to pick backing the Dolphins because he liked Dan Marino as a kid, and then the Dolphins did absolutely nothing forever. Poor old Ross, if you're out there, hope you're doing all right. Hope they do okay this weekend. All right, we'll go to the 9:30 game, which is the Giants against the Vikings. I'm not going to say anything because we have a Giants fan here. I'm going to start with him. Brian, what do you say with your head and what do you say with your heart?
I thought you wouldn't have come to me first. I thought I would have an opportunity to compose myself and hear what the guys have to say.
Compose yourself. Hold on there a second. I'll go to Colin first and then I'll come to you. Okay, just take a minute there, Brian. Colin, what are your thoughts?
This is probably the tightest game of the weekend. These are two teams who are pretty evenly matched in many respects, despite the way in which their records would suggest. But the Vikings, as we know, got the walk-off win against the Giants a few weeks ago, 61-yard field goal. Usually things end in disaster when it comes to late field goals for the Vikings, but under Kevin O'Connell, it's a little bit different. Two rookie head coaches going up against one another in this. Two quarterbacks who I think there have been lots of questions about. But then the strengths of the teams vary after that, because for the Vikings, it's all about Justin Jefferson, who I would argue is the offensive player of the year. Whereas for the Giants, it's about Saquon in terms of moving the ball, but it is about Sexy Dexy in terms of shutting teams down. The man who ate 2 large fish and chips in London and said that he still wasn't full. So good luck to Dalvin Cook trying to run around him. And it's probably as well that they're playing in a dome, because he's so large, Cala, that he casts his own shadow. I think this one will come right down to the wire. I think it is a game that could go either way, but I just think that ultimately Kevin O'Connell seems to be blessed in close games this year. The Vikings may not win the Super Bowl, but in a close game, they just seem to come up and get the win. So ultimately, I'm going to say they edge it.
Edge it for the Vikings. And Sexy Dexy, I'm flabbergasted. I'm going to have to look this individual up afterwards. Okay, Brian, are you composed? Do you have your thoughts together?
Just call him off next year's Christmas list. Just look, in many ways, I agree with everything Colin was saying. I reflect on the game on Christmas Eve, in which the Giants turned the ball over 3 times at critical times during the game, and yet they still lost by a field goal. But look, not every game is the same in the NFL. I appreciate that, but both teams are very evenly matched. And the Vikings have played 9 games at home this season, and with the exception of the Cowboys game, where they got completely toasted, they've won 8 games by 1 score. And yeah, it's the manner of the victories in terms of the camaraderie and the momentum it's built throughout the course of the season, that they've gone and won these games, and it shows a lot in terms of the head coach and the players playing for them. And quite similar in a way to the Giants. Whilst the Giants may not have the players that they've had, how the Giants have gone about winning games this season, early on in the season, was keep it tight, remain in the game and have an opportunity in the fourth quarter. And ultimately then it came down to good coaching and play and decision making. And this year's Giants quarterback, his decision making has been fantastic. In terms of where he was last year in that particular game on Christmas Eve, because of the injuries in which the Giants had defensively, despite the fact they continued to blitz Cousins, 48% of the players of defensive were blitzes. They had to go zone in the secondary, which allowed Jefferson. And look, Jefferson, whether he's man marked or whether it's zone, he does his damage because he's a great wide receiver in the league. The Giants are getting Adoree Jackson back, who's their standout cornerback on Sunday, and he will be up against Jefferson. So you've got to take the run game away, Cook and Madison, and try and make it as one-dimensional and find a way to take Jefferson out of the game. But even if you take Jefferson out of the game, they've got players like Hockenson and Thielen. And I think it's a disservice to the Giants offensively that people are continuously talking about Barkley, because as the season has evolved, whilst they may not be big names, collectively as a group, the wide receivers have done really well. In particular, that game in Minnesota a few weeks ago, all 3 wide receivers had huge numbers and some of them scored touchdowns. I'm going to go. I don't know if it's a shock. Genuinely, I don't know if it's a shock, but I am going to go with the Giants to win. I think the law of averages, if you continue to win games at home by one score, at some stage that luck runs out, and I think the Giants might be on the right side of it on Sunday and win a late game. I agree with Colin. I think it'll be close. I think it'll come down potentially to the last drive of the game. Who has the ball last? And I'm going to go with the Giants to win with a late score.
Okay. Just to be clear as well, if it's a shock result, broadly, yes, but it's no shock to me that you pick the Giants, by the way, but that's cool. Okay. Christina, what about you?
So I'm leaning with the Vikings only because the Vikings are at home. They're going to want to light it up. It's the last game of the season at home. I think what's interesting is this is the 4th postseason matchup for these guys. It's a bit crazy that this has happened so far. And so far, the Giants are 2 wins up. Obviously, the Vikings won as well. Most memorable was week 16. I do think, though, that Daniel Jones and Shaquan will actually have a really good game in regards to keeping the Giants in there with their running game. I do think they're going to bring some really big plays. But I just think that the Vikings are able to move the ball a lot more consistently than what the Giants are able to do. That's why I'm going to go with the Giants. Kirk Cousins is just going to go out fighting at home.
You're going to go with the Giants or the Vikings? Sorry, you said
the Vikings.
You said Giants and then Cousins, and I was like, even me, who doesn't know enough about football, knew that didn't tally.
I was doing what the guys were doing during the week as well. Colin and Mark are known for, which is trying to cover myself. There we go.
Fair enough. Hedging your bets as always. Okay, very good. All right, and Mark, your call finally on this one.
As I'm allegedly saying I'm covering myself, I am going to give Dolphins fans one glimmer of hope, which is TJ Yates, actually, quarterback the Texans as a rookie, filling in for Matt Schaub and won a playoff game. So there you go. There's a glimmer of hope, and I've covered myself as I'm being accused of doing. So I'll give him that 42-7 then instead of 42-3. On this game, Giants and Vikings, frankly, Callie, most of the normal statistics would tell us these two teams are pretty bad. There have only been 53 teams in the history of the NFL that have made the playoffs with a negative point differential. The Giants, a -6 for the season. Unbelievably, given their win-loss record, the Vikings also have a negative point differential. Brian will like this stat, though. Out of all the teams that had the negative point differential, only one of them went on to the Super Bowl, and that was, of course, the 2011 Giants. Can't remember who they beat in the Super Bowl, but, apparently they won it that year. The reality for me is, the Vikings have been stumbling. The Vikings' performance in the last few weeks has been diabolical since that. Obviously, that Cowboys game in particular. However, and the Packers game were very disappointing results. However, let's not kid ourselves, Brian. The Giants, since a great start to the season, have really gone off the boil. I mean, I think in the last 8 games, they're 2-5-1, and the 2 wins were against the Colts and the Commanders. It's not exactly setting the world alight, to put it bluntly. And in fairness, we are now at the end of the season saying something we never thought we'd say at the start of the season. They're winning the games, and to your point about Barkley, relying on Daniel Jones. The last few weeks, even with that win-loss record, he's probably had some of his best games as a Giant in his entire career so far. The vaunted defense is not as performing as it was at the start of the season. They're not getting the stops on 3rd down in red zone. At the start of the season, they were giving up yards, but stopping the scores. That hasn't been the case in the latter half. And I'm not saying the Vikings are world beaters, hence why I call out their negative point differential, hence why I call out that they have been thwacked. That would be a good word, thwacked in any game of material importance. I know when I called this out the other week, Colin mentioned, well, they beat the Bills. Yeah, remember how did they beat the Bills, Colin? With the luckiest play of all time in terms of the circumstances. So to me, yes, I don't believe the Vikings are necessarily designed to go all the way. Part of me would like to. A Vikings-Bills Super Bowl between 2 0-4 teams in the Super Bowl would be very interesting. But I think they've got enough to handle the Giants, who are just happy basically to be back in the dance and to be back on the right path under Daboll and Schoen. So Vikings for me as well.
Vikings for you. Can I ask a question? And Brian, you're probably the right man to ask as a Giants fan. When was the last time the Giants were in the playoffs?
2016.
2016. So, I mean, I suppose if we're to go back to the point that I think Colin might have made it at the very start of the show, was just this notion of that it's playoff football and there's a lot on the line here. I can't see why the Giants can't win. I'll just give you that. Also, I have a lot of love in my heart for New York because I lived there for 7 years. So I'm gonna pick the Giants. It doesn't really matter. Nobody gives a shit what I think. I'm probably not
Mark
going to
said
swear
that-
on YouTube.
Mark-
Sorry.
Mark said that there's a feeling within, I don't know whether it's the outside looking in, there's a feeling that the Giants are just very happy to be back in the playoffs. Mark obviously hasn't been watching any of Brian Dable's press conferences this week.
Okay, fair enough. Right. Mark, did you have one last counterpoint
Very-
to
very
that?
last
Make
point.
it quick now. Make
I
it
knew
quick.
Brian
Listen to
was
this
gonna say
bickering.
that. You could call this the nobody believes in us bowl, because that's the line the Vikings are taking and the Giants are taking. They both can't be right.
Indeed. Why would they? I like the Vikings too. You know, I'm Swedish of origin, and they sent me pencils one time when I wrote to the Minnesota Vikings as a young man. So, you know, they can't be all bad. All right, we're going to go to the last one, which is the Sunday night football game, which is the 1 o'clock in the morning job for us in Ireland here. It's the Ravens at the Bengals. So it's another one of these ones where teams from the same division are playing against each other. This seems like a good matchup. So I want to hear maybe this time I'll go to you, Colin, perhaps first, and get your take on this Ravens-Bengals game.
Well, unfortunately, Cal, it looks like for the Ravens, they will not have QB1, and that is, I think, going to mean that this is less of a contest than it would have been. It would be fascinating to see Lamar Jackson, a fully fit Lamar Jackson, go up against Joe Burrow, but that, alas, is not likely to happen. And I think it'll be interesting to see ultimately what happens with Lamar in the off season. For the Bengals, they needed to take care of business last week, and they did. I think the Bengals, you can sense it. They feel a little bit aggrieved at the way in which things played out for them. I think they would have felt that they had a reasonable shot at beating the Bills. Obviously, events with DeMar meant that that didn't happen. Great news, obviously, further great news this week that he is out of hospital. But I think Joe Burrow with a chip on his shoulder is a very, very dangerous thing. And it's not something that any of the AFC teams are going to enjoy or going to relish going up against him. His ability to remain calm under pressure, and it doesn't seem to faze him no matter what you throw at him. You go back last year against the Titans, 9 sacks, he got the job done. You go in the fact that they go into Arrowhead, the Chiefs are steamrolling them, and he just keeps the same just constant, just the level of calm, and he just goes about his business and is able to channel that anger, that chip on his shoulder, whatever you want. I think the Bengals could be very, very dangerous in the playoffs, and I have them beating the Ravens.
Okay, Bengals beating the Ravens. I'm going to go to you, Mark, this time. What's your take on this one?
Cats eat birds.
Mhm.
Bengals. Wow.
That's it. That's your take. I like it. I keep it short and sweet. Love it. I was going to ask at the end if this was actually Bengals versus Ravens. I think it might be a fairly unfair matchup, and it probably is comparable in the real world as well, or the football world. Is that real? I don't know. Christina, what about you? Bengals, Ravens.
I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think it's interesting, though, that since 1978, this is actually the 17th time both teams have actually met each other 1 week after playing each other in the playoffs. Which is a bit of a random and crazy stat. But look, without Lamar Jackson, I just really feel Baltimore just haven't been able to do it this year. Everyone is just, Colin has really touched on Joe Burrow. He has this matrix ability around him. It's not just the glasses he wears on his way into the stadium. He really does have that Neo chip on his shoulder. He commands that room, that dressing room, that everyone joins him and everyone believes in him and everyone believes in themselves and the team. And that's something I really see Baltimore are lacking right now because they just don't have that clear leader. So it's definitely going to be the Bengals.
Whoa, the Bengals. Awesome. That was my Best Keanu Reeves impersonation. Thank you. All right, Brian, what about you? Ravens and Bengals.
I I don't want to get too far into the offseason, but I think there's a real story brewing.
I thought you were going to say I don't want to do a Keanu Reeves impersonation. You don't have to.
No, I won't. No, but this Lamar Jackson storyline, because for weeks on end when he was out injured, it was all a case of, look, he'll come playoff time, he'll be back. And even on NFL Network today, they were saying the timeline based on the injury that's been, I suppose, communicated to the media over, whether it's him or other players, he would be back by now. He said he would have been back last week, and he definitely should have been available this week. So for the fact it essentially looks like he's been ruled out already for the weekend, it's quite strange. And it's it's a season where he's going to be looking for a big contract, and it was the kind of one of the key talking points last summer, whether he was going to get the contract, and they couldn't get it done before the season started. He started off the season great, then obviously he got injured, and it's kind of gone away. And the Ravens are kind of falling into the same pattern that they had last year. But the problem is last year it was around the defense and how many injuries they had, which led to them not making the playoffs, albeit they had a chance late in the season to get there. And this year was a bit weird because they were in the playoffs because they did so well earlier in the season with Lamar Jackson that they built up so many wins that they kind of just fell into the playoffs and fell into the position in which they're in. And Christina's right. I mean, it's very unusual to see teams play each other week 17 or week 18 in this NFL world now and then find themselves playing each other again, and inevitably it tends to be the same results. So it's Bengals all day for me. Colin was right. They're playing with a chip on the shoulder. We saw some comments last weekend from the players after the game around the fact that they feel the NFL has done them a disservice, that they haven't had the opportunity to put themselves in a better position to be in the Super Bowl because of the seeding situation. I think they'll go out again this weekend, make a real point and make sure that they win this game comfortably and put themselves in a real strong position whether they play the Chiefs or the Bills the following week. In all likelihood, it's one of those two teams.
All right, full house for the Bengals. I have some love for the Bengals. In fact, my friend in Berlin, Andre, was the one who got me into NFL in the very first place, and he's a Bengals fan, so you can imagine he was excited and crushed last year as well. So shout out, Andre. Hope the Bengals do it as well. Okay, that is our lot, because I think we're gonna preview the last wildcard game, which is Bucks and Cowboys. Isn't that right? Cowboys at the Bucks. It's a case of who do I want to win less, personally. But anyway, we can talk about that on Monday when we review these ones. But let's have a look at a couple of more comments, Brian, if you have them there.
Yeah, just bear with me a second. Jump in here now and see what we've.
I think they've been pretty active, haven't they?
Yeah, sorry, so that one's gone up already. Owen, yeah, he's confident in the Bengals. Just jumping, there's quite a few in here. There's a bit of a story around Tom Brady and where he's going to play next season. Owen again. Raiders will offer everything for Brady. There's a storyline going around for the past few weeks with the fact that Derek Carr, who confirmed today will no longer be the Raiders quarterback, will be moving on. There's a storyline that the Bucs won't be keeping Brady and he will inevitably end up in Las Vegas playing for the Raiders next season. So there's a lot of dialogue.
Newly divorced Tom Brady moves to Las Vegas. It sounds like a disastrous Hollywood movie waiting to happen. Fantastic.
What could go wrong, Calais? What could
possibly go wrong with a man like that?
For anyone else, that would be an amazing comedic adventure. For Tom Brady, it will just be this bleak documentary where he gets up at 3 a.m. to work out in the gym and drinks 3 liters of water before 11 a.m. Just on the Brady thing, had the opportunity to talk to Karen Vitale during the week, obviously formerly with the Bucs, and she had a really interesting and fair point. Before Brady signed for Tampa Bay, he did a lot of homework. He found out where the team really was at and who he could bring in with him. He doesn't want to go somewhere, and the window is even tighter now. Tom needs to win now. The Raiders don't have the money to bring in the guys Tom is going to want to bring in. They're not set up to win now. I would be Mark Davis, I'm sure, would absolutely love Tom Brady in Vegas. I do not see Tom Brady landing there.
Fair enough. Tom Brady in Vegas sounds a bit like Cristiano Ronaldo going to play in Saudi Arabia to me as well. It's kind of a big flashy move as well, doesn't it? Anyway, he needs to make his crypto back, says Owen. I like that. Very good. Okay, well, I think on that note, let's just remind folks, like we said at the top of the show, there is an upcoming live event at the PointsBet offices. And also at the conclusion of that week, actually, can you flash it up there on screen, Brian? There's the Irish NFL show live in Captain America's on the 27th from 7:30 to 9. And those tickets are €10 and they go on sale tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right, gang?
Got it in one?
Yeah. Tomorrow
Got it in
morning,
one.
9 a.m. Yeah, the link will be
Tomorrow
online.
morning at 9 a.m. It's like lining up for U2 tickets or Garth Brooks tickets. You want to get jumping in there now, running to stand still. Okay, well, that is all we have time for on tonight's show. Thanks to Colm, thanks to Brian, thanks to Christina, and thanks to Mark. And I suppose I'll thank myself. Thanks, Calla. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the weekend of wildcards. See ya.